Well, hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Power of Your Mind podcast. You are listening to episode number 292. I'm Victoria Gallagher, the Law of Attraction hypnotist and #1 best-selling author of Practical Law of Attraction. Align yourself with the manifesting conditions and successfully attract your desires. I'm also the founder of HypnoCloud Apps, HipTalk.com, which gives you access to over 500 hypnosis recordings right in the palm of your hand. But we also have our new Believe app coming soon, maybe in a couple more weeks. We never know. But keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Kate Northrup. As an entrepreneur, best-selling author, and mother, Kate Northrup supports ambitious people to light up the world without burning themselves out. Kate teaches people how to heal your relationship with money, with time, with work. She is the best-selling author of Money, a Love Story, and Do Less, the creator of the Do Less Planner, and the host of the top-ranking podcast, Plenty. And her work has been featured all over the place: the New York Times, Oprah Daily, The Today Show, Glamour, Harvard Business Review, and more. And she lives with her husband and business partner and 2 daughters in Miami. And she can be found on her website, katenorthrup.com, as well as the Plenty podcast. And we are going to have all the links to all the great stuff that she does. But today, Kate is going to be sharing some of her insights on women's relationship to work, money, and power. So, welcome to the show, Kate. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. I've been kind of, spying on you, following you, whatever you want to call it, for a little while now. And you've been just doing some great things in the world with regard to, helping people, especially women, to help avoid that burnout, that whole theme of doing less and earning more. I think that appeals to a lot of our listeners. So I am really ready to dive into that. But first, maybe you could just kind of tell us how you got to this place. Were you a person that was dealing with this overwhelm that we all seem to have to
Yeah,
deal with at some point?
I mean, completely. And you know, I think like all of us, it's an evolution. I don't think that we ever hit anything and then we're totally done with it. But yes, I had my first, well, I mean, I never was like clinically burned out, just,
Mhm.
just to be clear. But yeah, I found myself in 2018 for the first time massively overwhelmed. So I'll never forget the moment I was driving down my road and then pulled into my driveway and just sat in the car, and I was completely bereft. I was like sobbing. I called my mother. She, for whatever reason in that moment, was like not available for being of support. And I just remember thinking, like, what am I going to do? So what was going on at the time is I had a 6-month-old baby. I had a 3-year-old little girl. So 2 little girls, 6 months old and 3 years old. I had built this 7-figure company with my husband, and all of a sudden, my husband was incredibly sick, and we had no idea what was going on with him. And it had been going on for months, and he was basically incapacitated. So suddenly I was there with like the financial responsibility, my team who is depending on, the company for feeding their families, and then these 2 little girls. And I just felt like this is too much. This is too much pressure. This is so intense. And then, I learned a lot during that time. And I was able to, it was so funny because I had wait, what's the timeline here? Yeah, okay. Then a year after that, my book Do Less came out. A year and a half after that, my book Do Less came out. So I was sort of like living it as I was writing it. And then I believe that we have soul assignments or we have curriculums. And one of my curriculums has been around feeling overly responsible and feeling like I'm not supported. Um, and so then it was January 2021, and my husband had gotten better, and then he was sick again. And we had found ourselves on this trip to Florida, and the people he was working with said, you'll heal faster if you stay in Florida. We were living in Maine at the time. And so there we were, like, we decided to move to Miami temporarily, but then we were like paying for two lives. And I found myself again, like, how is it possible that 3 years later I'm like, what, how are we here again?
Yeah.
The two little kids now paying for two lives, running the company, my husband's sick, the financial pressure, whatever. And I just thought, okay. I mean, there's a lot of sub stories in there that we can get into, but basically, I learned that I couldn't keep waiting for my external circumstances to shift if I wanted to feel relaxed.
Yeah.
That I was going to need to find a way to find that peace inside myself, regardless of the external circumstances, because I kept waiting for things to be different and I kept finding myself exactly in the same place.
Oh my God. Literally, the timing of this could not be better because I found myself this morning journaling that exact same thing.
Wow.
And I'm being totally vulnerable with you because I was like, because I'm all about manifestation. And, I've had this app, as I mentioned, getting ready to launch and it's taken 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, just get over this story because, the thing is that I was thinking this morning, it's like, look, you know, it doesn't matter what all this story and stuff that I've been through. If I can't manifest an internal state that I wish to feel, how can I manifest the things that seem to be external to me?
Right.
So
And
I'm right there
I
with
mean,
you.
I think like that's the lie we've been told partially by our own industry, which is, or just it's not a lie, it's like a misunderstanding, or it's a version of the truth that, isn't exactly the paradigm I'm operating in, which is sort of this idea of like, if you do these external things, if you get the house, if you have the husband, if you have the partner, if you have the baby, if you have the money, if you have the Mercedes, if you have the landscaping, if you have the accolades on your website, that, whatever, all the book deal, that like, then you will, it's the same old, like, if I, then I, like, if then I will get to feel this certain way after these certain things come to pass. And I was like, okay, I am desperate to feel relaxed and supported and calm.
Ooh.
And I do not know, like, I could not get my husband to be healthy. I couldn't fix that. That was not something I had the capability of. And then very shortly after he started feeling better, he broke his knee. And then he suddenly couldn't walk. And I was like, okay, God,
Oh, shoot.
cannot be happening.
Just
And
keep
then
piling it on.
and then a year and a half later, he was hit by a car and same knee and couldn't walk again. And so it's just like been, I mean, luckily he's like so great now and he's super
Oh,
healthy and
good.
vibrant, just like
That's so good.
actually kind of comical in retrospect, but just like, okay,
What
you
the heck?
cannot make this up. And so I really have been about over the last, 3 to 4 years learning, okay, how can I get into a relationship with my nervous system, which is really like, I believe our nervous system is our energetic point of attraction. So we talk a lot in the law of attraction about frequency and about your vibration and whatever. So the nervous system, though, speaks in the language of energy. And
Mhm.
all of our life experiences that we could not fully metabolize in the moment they were happening live in our body, in our nervous system. Our nervous system is essentially a quilt or a web of our memories and the energy, the frequency of our lived experiences that, again, we couldn't fully metabolize in the moment. And so I was like, all right, I am obviously operating at a frequency of stress and pressure. And it makes sense. I grew up in an environment where stress and pressure were the thermostat in my house. And so, according to our nervous systems, what feels familiar feels safe.
Yeah.
And so, of course, I was just recreating over and over. And I'm not saying I attracted my husband's illness. I'm not saying I attracted him getting hurt. Like, that's not exactly what I'm saying. But of course, the way I would respond to those scenarios
Mhm.
was with a response of what was deeply ingrained in my energetic body, which was stress and pressure. And I realized if I don't want to live this way, I have to make a different decision. Like, I'm going to have to change my behavior instead of waiting for the world around me to shift. And of course, when I changed the way I was being, things did shift externally.
Yeah, absolutely. That absolutely makes so much sense. And it is true that, it's like and I kind of equate it to, that's how we impress the subconscious is based on that feeling. That's what and I mean, because the subconscious is attracting all of our experiences to us. And so, yeah, if we're living in a state of stress or chaos or overwhelm or burnout or whatever it is, we're just going to keep generating that over and over and over again. So what did you do? I mean, like what?
Yeah. Well, first, the moment that I really, this kind of hit me between the eyes was my husband and I were on a Zoom call with our therapist, and he and I had been in this loop over the years through a variety of circumstances in which I sort of I had this idea that if I just thought money was the problem. Like, I basically thought money was the problem. And so I was like, I feel financial pressure. I feel like I'm always on the hook. Da da da. You're sick. You're da da da. I mean, it wasn't like the most compassionate, but I was doing my best. So, anyway, but we're on the call with our therapist, and our therapist said, David, he said, close your eyes and imagine now that Mike has come home and he's just like, babe, I just made $10 million. So it's in the bank. You do not have to do anything. And he said, how does your body feel receiving that news? And I was shocked because what the response was physically was not what I would have expected it to be, which would be like calm and relaxed and so happy. The response inside my body was feeling like I had flatlined, like literally feeling like I was dead and I didn't have a heartbeat.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it was shocking. This is
Yeah.
what our bodies are so wise. They can tell us so many things if we will just listen. And so I realized what that meant was that I was using stress and pressure as a fuel source to make me feel alive, and that
Um,
without it, I would feel dead inside. And I knew that was going to be a real problem long term. I mean, that is a surefire way to illness, certainly raising daughters who are completely stressed out and twirled out. I mean, I didn't want that to be the environment that I was, raising my kids in. And so I had a coach at the time, and she gave me this assignment. And she said, well, she's actually still my coach. And she said, okay, do you have an amount of money that you feel like you could just go in the hole and know that, like, you could burn through a certain amount of your savings or be okay with, going into a line of credit a certain amount, that you know that you could make that back relatively, you've done it before, like you could do it. I said, yeah, I do. And she said, okay, great. So that amount of money you are going to experiment with a certain amount of, you can either go into the hole that amount of money, or what would be an amount of time that feels like a good amount of time. I was like 90 days. And so we just decided together for 90 days, either if 90 days came first or if we had, spent this amount of money, whichever came first, I was going to just practice relaxing, despite not having any evidence that it was a good time to do so. So I was still running my business. I was still the primary parent. I still was paying for 2 lives. I still had a sick husband. All indications were like, this is not the time to relax. And I just was like, I'm gonna see what'll happen. I'm doing this experiment. We did not go into the hole. 90 days came and went. I didn't even notice that it went by. And we hit all of our financial goals, have continued to do so. And I realized that stress and pressure were actually not essential ingredients for me to make really good money and be, quote unquote, successful, have an impact. And I had, through the practice of giving myself evidence to the contrary of that deep, deep patterning.
Yeah.
Over every day, I had practiced little by little, having a trigger of like, ooh, I feel like I should go do this promotion. I feel like I should do that. And just being like, oh, no, we're practicing. Just what would it be like to, yes, of course, fulfill on my commitments. I didn't just like go dark. I had thousands of customers and a team and all of that stuff. But I did the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And I started doing things like watching TV in the middle of the day. And really just cried a lot. And I sat by the ocean. I just asked the ocean what it had to tell me. I just really went in and slowed way down. And, it's been an ongoing practice, but that really kicked off a rewiring and a shift in my deep nervous system patterning around hypervigilance
Yeah.
and needing to be in essentially like a sympathetic arousal in order to do my work.
Yeah. Wow. That is fascinating. I mean, so you kind of, so let me just kind of reiterate everything that just transpired. So you got in touch with the fact that you were thriving in the space of, stress. I mean, you felt like it was the space of stress that you needed in order to thrive.
Yes, and I couldn't have articulated that, but it was clear that through my behavior, that's what was the underlying belief that was running the show.
Exactly. And then you got this, you went on this scientific experiment basically to say, well, what if I just turn that off and replace that with the, extreme levels instead of having this extreme levels of stress, let's replace that with extreme levels of relaxation and comfort and getting the bare essentials that you needed to get done, but just enjoying, and being instead of stressing and worrying and it just turned things around.
It really did turn things around. I mean, and it doesn't mean we haven't had our moments of like,
Yeah.
but I can say we just had our biggest year in business ever. I don't know, I'm not so good with percentages, but anyway, we had our, we had our biggest year in business ever. And I have more space than I've ever had in my life. And it feels so safe. Whereas before, if I had spaciousness, I did everything possible to fill it because it made me so anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I love it. I mean, so how can people step into this transformation in their own lives?
Yeah. So, I think fundamentally it's just really important to understand some of the mechanics of the nervous system, which I didn't know when I wrote Money a Love Story. I didn't know when I wrote Do Less. So this has been, newish to me since
Mhm.
2019. I started studying the nervous system in 2019, just before Do Less came out. So the universe was like teeing me up for the next
Yeah.
chapter. But basically, our nervous system is responsible for like the vast majority of all of our other physical systems. And depending on what state we are in, so we can be in a ventral state, a dorsal state, or a sympathetic state. But essentially, what that means is we're either freaked out and we feel unsafe, or we feel safe.
Mhm,
Okay. And
mhm,
there's it's a wide spectrum of what that may look like, but it's basically we're in a parasympathetic, which is the ventral, which is rest, tend and befriend, digest, or we are in a sympathetic state, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, or we're in like full on collapse, which
mhm.
is the dorsal response. So that's like quite extreme.
Yeah.
Like we're like frozen. Okay. So essentially, we have a society that is in a sympathetic arousal
Mm,
state. Our
mhm,
society is fight, flight, fawn for sure, sometimes freeze. But if you just think about the way social media works, the way the
mhm.
news works, the way everything works, like it's very it's
Reactive.
it's hyper, right?
Yeah,
It's like hyper.
yeah.
And then the way the business world is like, okay, go more, go bigger, do better, make more money, get it, right? It's like all of that. And so we are constantly in this energetic field of ramp up.
Yeah,
And so it makes sense. And most of us were raised in an environment where there was some degree of stress or pressure or chaos
mhm.
that was the norm. That was the norm, even if you were physically safe. Who knows what was going on emotionally, right? And so for many of us, especially around money or success or just any kind of stability, we think we want certain things, right? You work in the world of desire.
Yeah.
So we have these desires, but what's the kind of the cosmic joke is that everything we desire mostly is something we haven't experienced before, or at least not in that way.
Mhm.
And so, according to the nervous system, that which we have not experienced before registers as unsafe because it's unfamiliar. So, the name of the game is to learn to befriend and become intimate with our nervous systems, which is the energetic attraction point of attraction for our lives, for our bodies, so that as we come up against the edges of our expansion, we can learn to signal safety, learn to increase our capacity for regulation, for nervous system regulation. And nervous system regulation means we are able to respond to the inevitable ebbs and flows of life without going into a hyper or a hypo arousal. So either fight or flight, or freeze or fawn, or possibly even collapse. And so it's a gentler process than
Mhm.
like a lot of the personal development that I came up around,
Mhm.
which was very much like everything you want is outside your comfort zone. Like you have to, like you have to be uncomfortable all the time if you want your desires. And yes, it is true. We do need to get uncomfortable. But
Yeah,
like in my example, where I gave you that 90-day experiment,
yeah.
it was deeply uncomfortable to relax instead of ramping up. It
Mm-hmm.
was. It
Yeah.
was deeply uncomfortable, but it wasn't like dramatic in any way. If you had actually seen what was happening, it looked pretty damn boring. And so the thing is, the nervous system is very subtle. The nervous system is slow, and it likes things that are predictable and honestly relatively boring. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's nuanced, and it's like, so we need to basically, how do we get started? One of the things we can do is begin to practice our skills at interoception. And interoception is the ability, as opposed to proprioception. So proprioception is like, I know where my body is in space compared to other bodies or other objects. Like I can
Okay.
feel the space
A little
around me.
bit more of like an external
That's
awareness.
externally referencing.
Mhm.
Most of us are very good at externally referencing, also, especially if we grew up in households where there was not a highly attuned emotional presence. We
Mhm.
may have overly developed our capacity to be checking outside. And so for us, we need to actually build our capacity to check inside, which
Mhm.
is called interoception. And it's basically like, how does it feel inside my body? Not how does it feel outside my body? And what
Mhm.
does everyone else feel outside my body? But do I feel inside my body? So you can just practice it right now as you're listening to this podcast. You could just go, just notice if there's a part of your body that would like your attention. You just close your eyes and just see, like, okay, um, for me right now, it's the place over my heart. It's just like the kind of like the area of my chest right over my heart. And then I'm going to that place and I'm just noticing inside my body, what does that feel like? Does it have a temperature, a kind of like a texture, a color? Is it tight? Is it spacious? Is it activated anyway? Is there a vibration? And then just getting to know the internal sensations. Another way you can do it is you could practice squeezing your arm. So if you take your left hand and you squeeze your right arm, there's the feeling of what the left hand is feeling, but the interoception is feeling what the right arm is feeling getting squeezed. So there's the squeezer hand,
Mhm. Mhm.
but building your sense of interoception is actually becoming conscious of what the squeezed part of you feels, as opposed to only the
Mm.
squeezer
Uh-huh.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so it's subtle, and you might be listening and being like, how's this gonna help me? But what I want to say, because I was totally, a decade ago, I would have been like, oh my God, snooze fest. But I have to tell you, everything is energy.
Mhm.
And if we want to manifest our desires, we have to learn to feel safe inside our bodies and increase our range of ability to feel safe with a wider and wider range of experiences. And
Mm.
the only way we can do that is by knowing what it feels like inside our body. Because in order to grow our range of capacity, our body needs to know it's safe, like somebody is home with us. And
Mhm.
so practicing interoception is like a beautiful place to start. And one of the terms in the nervous system world is titration. And titration means doing small, doable parts, small, doable steps. So it's not like, okay, revolutionize everything all at once, but could you, for 30 seconds, just notice what it feels like inside your body? And then tomorrow, could you do a minute? And then over time, what you'll realize is you're like sitting in a meeting that would have really activated you in the past and would have really sent you into a spin. And you're just like, wow, I'm actually freaking here, experiencing my life. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the game.
So it's really kind of getting this the sense of awareness
Yeah,
of how you actually feel. Um, which I think is so important and so crucial because it whatever you are feeling inside, you're feeling it whether you're aware of it or not.
it is happening whether you're aware of it or not. You're right.
And whatever you're not aware of has so much control over you.
Totally. Our unconscious is running the show.
Yeah.
But when we bring it into consciousness, then we're at choice. And I love this quote. I don't remember who said it, but they said, a regulated nervous system does not mean being calm all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It means being at choice,
Mm.
meaning we are not being run by external circumstances, but we are actually having agency. We are responding to life as opposed to reacting to life. And we're able to be more in that witness consciousness. And when we're able to be in that, in my experience, life becomes so much juicier and more joyful. And for those who feel like they're kind of like hovering over the surface of their life all the time and sort of wondering, like, is this all there is? Like, I did all, I checked the boxes, but I kind of thought it was going to be better. It may be that deepening your relationship with your nervous system may very well help you like actually be in the richness of what's already around you so you don't miss it.
Yeah. Oh, this is beautiful. I mean, it's really rich. It's so simple, but it's really
Yes,
rich.
yes, it is.
And, I think so many people, women and men both, can definitely benefit from just this whole, do less idea. Um, because so many of us have this belief that you know, you ha- that like our worth is tied to how much we get done, how much we get accomplished. I mean, like I find myself sometimes, I'll have those scattered days where it's like I know I didn't do my, you're familiar with the Pomodoros,
Yeah.
where you and it's like, oh my God, like life is great after I've had, a day of full of Pomodoros. But if I just sort of screw around and don't get a whole lot accomplished that day, it's kind of like, I don't know, there just feels like there's something missing, there feels like there's something missing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because one of the things that I wrote about a lot in Do Less is seasonality and the way, especially for women, but we really all, no matter our gender identity, we are wired this way. Human beings, we are animals, and animals are seasonal creatures. We are of nature. It's not like we need to like help nature or we are nature, right? Like we are animals. And so there are particular energies during the month, during the year, even during the day, when actually there's an energetic imperative or requirement that we kind of putter around. And that like that actually is an essential ingredient to creativity and
Yeah.
to birthing anything. But our culture is so hyper identified with masculine productivity, with
Yeah.
external proof. We want to just constantly be seeing visible results, visible results, visible results, which is very spring and summertime energy. It's very young, it's very solar. But actually, what's required to like grow a pumpkin, for example, is a great deal of time where it looks like there's nothing happening, but
Yeah.
there's a lot going on invisibly, either inside the seed or under the surface of the soil. And so I really encourage us to take a more holistic view of our creations, of our projects, so that we can learn to lean into all of the phases of creation. The spring and the summer energy, for sure, when you're getting things going, when you're launching them, but also just as much the autumn energy where we're wrapping things up and turning within, and the wintertime energy where we're really in that rest and reflection, and where the puttering around is essential in order for the birth of the next project or the next chapter or iteration of what you're working on. So I actually schedule those days into my week every single week now,
Yeah.
because I need them for the bigger external visible results as well.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's okay to step away from the computer
Yeah.
or step away from what you're doing and actually like schedule time to play.
I absolutely do. And it might be playtime. Like, tomorrow I'm going to the spa with girlfriends, or on Mondays, like I just don't schedule appointments. So it's like technically a work day,
Yeah.
but sometimes I'll spend half the day like wiping down the counters and rearranging things. And I know that, having been working this way for long enough and tracking my own creative cycles, I know that when I sit down to do my writing or whatever it is, that puttering time was part of it. It was not procrastination. It was not avoidance. Now, sometimes I do get into procrastination, but for the most part, that time was time when I was integrating new ideas. I was letting my mind wander. I was, ideating. I mean, so much happens when we are just in movement with spaciousness, where we're not trying to bear down on a project or on a problem. And it actually saves us a great deal of time and energy when we do sit down and do the Pomodoro or whatever, and get the visible results. They come faster when we give ourselves all those other phases as well.
I agree. In a sense, I think one of the things I stumbled on years ago with my clients was the whole reason why we procrastinate. And I think that the whole reason why we procrastinate is because we need that downtime. We
Yeah.
need that time. And so it's our little rebellion saying, "Hey,
Yes.
hello, take some time for me."
Yeah, it's either schedule it on purpose or your mind will take it for you.
Yeah.
It'll take it regardless.
It insists on it. We need it. So you help a lot of women through this process. Can you take us through maybe a transformation that other women have
Yeah.
experienced that,
Yeah.
have worked with you?
Yeah. So, my signature program right now is around money in the nervous system, because
Mhm.
uh, one of the greatest sources of pressure in our world is financial,
Mhm.
right? So, so much of our productivity and our pressure to get things done is looped into, because I have to make money.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I find that it is a very fertile ground for healing. And because it can be so intense. And so I have this one client who came to me actually this past spring, and she is a very successful woman, has had a big career, on social media, as an author, as a speaker, sought after in Hollywood for a variety of things. And she had done actually a lot of the nervous system healing work. So this was not new to her. I mean, in fact, she has taught some of it herself, the somatic work that we practice. And yet, she had not applied it specifically to her financial life. And she was very, what's the word? It's not disembodied, but well, it's disconnected, but that's still not the word I'm looking for. Anyway, it's another D word. and Disassociated.
Oh, yeah.
Disassociated from her money. And this is very common with women, even with very ambitious, successful women. I would say a woman that I can help the most, or that finds the most benefit in the work, is someone who has had an external level of success that is not a match for what's going on behind the scenes in terms of how capable she feels with her money, how organized she feels with her money. Like, there's a feeling of like, I hope nobody goes and opens up the money closet because I don't want them to see what's happening back there. And so anyway, this particular woman, just really had a lot of fear around and avoidance habits around money. She wasn't looking really at what she made, wasn't looking at what she spent, was undercharging, was just kind of skittish around the whole thing. And through learning to combine the nervous system healing tools, the energetic tools that we practice, the frequency tools, the healing of money stories, emotional patterning, and then some belief work, some mindset work. Although I think that we focus on that less, because when you regulate your nervous system and you feel safe to be
Mhm.
powerful with money, your
Mhm.
thoughts are automatically pretty supportive.
Yes.
You don't have to like identify with your tweezers every limiting belief anymore. They're just pretty supportive. And so she was able to, in 6 months, have over 3 months of living expenses in the bank for the
Oh,
first
lovely.
time. She was
Mhm.
able to invest in her business in a way, like thousands and thousands of dollars invested in coaching and support and retreats in a way. She was able to sign up for stuff she never had money for in the past, and is now charging so much more. So she's working so much less, and she's able to still help people because she's able to extend to more one-to-many work, as opposed to only doing one-to-one. Because when our capacity is limited in terms of how safe we feel with money, we are going to limit our earning potential.
Absolutely.
We
Yeah.
just are. So when we learn to feel safe with money, money comes a lot more easily, and we can be a conduit of resources, and we can break out of the lie of scarcity. And it really is a lie that there's not enough to go around. The actual data is that there is enough to go around. There's enough for us all to live a really good life in terms of resources. We do have a problem with mismanagement of those resources on the planet, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But it's really important to understand that actually there's enough.
I believe that. I've always believed that, I mean, abundance, it's a state of mind. It's not, I mean, it is a reality on this planet that there is enough, of everything, every possible resource. Like you said, there's enough to go around. It's just a matter of like distribution.
Yes, it is a matter of distribution. And so often, women, especially who are heart centered, who are service oriented, get caught in thinking, oh, if I have more, I'm automatically taking away from someone else. And that is just based on the lie of scarcity,
Yeah.
that, like, if I take a deep breath, someone else won't have enough oxygen. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there is enough. And I think that more and more women need to learn about how to regulate their nervous system so that they can experience what you've experienced and what you've helped many, many people to experience. So, can you share some resources on, how people can start to work with you, or,
Yeah.
what can people can do to start to step into their do less, uh, have more mentality?
Yeah. I mean, one of the best places to connect with me is on my podcast, Plenty, because I'm just sharing every single week, resources and tips and interviews. But I did create a guide called the Pressure Relief Kit. And
Ooh,
if someone wants to get started, it's my 6 best strategies for creating that ease and spaciousness without your external circumstances needing to change. And
Mm.
so you can, if you send me a DM on Instagram, my Instagram is Kate Northrup, and you can just send me a DM with the word melt, MELT,
Oh,
and
that's
you'll get
perfect.
that guide for free. And you'll get a couple of my favorite nervous system regulation tools. You'll get a practice for really clarifying, okay, what's happening versus what is the story I'm telling about what's happening, and then 4 other really great tools, including how to align your workflow with either your menstrual cycle or the moon to help to use the energy of nature for momentum.
Ooh. Oh, these are great. These are great. So it's Melt.
Melt, yeah.
They can get that on your Instagram at Kate Northrup.
Yep, at Kate Northrup, just DM me melt.
I love it. Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing some strategies and, really helping us to understand a lot more about how how this is working at such a deep, energetic, unconscious level, and how we can really tune into that and how we can, really learn to have richer, fuller lives without all the chaos and stress and nasty energy that we, create for ourselves. This has been really enlightening. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.